Wars don't begin on battlefields. They begin in government finance offices. Before any soldier deploys, the money plan is already in place. Most people analyze wars by looking at military strategy, weapons, or political ideology. But those factors depend on something more fundamental. The real constraint on any military operation is not how many soldiers you have or how advanced your weapons are. It is how long you can keep paying for it. Governments do not stop fighting because they run out of troops. They stop when they run out of ways to fund the operation. Understanding war means understanding how governments pay for things they cannot afford, how they spread costs so people barely notice, and how operations continue when no private lender would step in. This is about the underlying financial system. The phrase "the government pays for the war" does not quite capture reality. Governments do not have large savings accounts. They operate on incoming money tax revenue, fees, tariffs, not stored reserves. When war spending suddenly increases 10 times over, that money does not come from savings the government set aside. It comes from financial tools designed to pull in money without causing immediate public backlash. A single modern naval carrier group costs hundreds of millions of dollars per year just to keep operational. Every deployment then multiplies costs through fuel, logistics, medical support, communications, and transportation. Governments do not have this money sitting around. They pull it in using methods that control who pays, when they pay, and whether they even realize they are paying. The way a war gets funded shapes not just the military campaign, but whether the public will tolerate it continuing. Some methods make the costs obvious. Others spread them across future generations or hide them completely. Which method a government chooses tells you more about its domestic political situation than its war strategy. There are four main ways to pay for wars: taxes, borrowing money, inflation, and having the central bank create new money. Everything else is some version of these four. Each one makes different people pay. Each one carries different political dangers. Governments that answer closely to voters tend to use taxes. Countries with independent central banks often create new money. Authoritarian governments often use inflation more freely. The payment method reflects how that government actually works. What looks like a financial choice is really the government's power structure showing itself. Taxation is the most straightforward method. The government raises taxes, income tax, sales tax, import duties, property levies. People pay immediately. The cost is impossible to hide. Historically, this was the main approach. When Britain fought Napoleon, it introduced income tax for the first time specifically to pay for the war. During the American Civil War, both sides created temporary income taxes, but modern wars cost far more. During World War II, the United States was spending over 40% of everything the country produced just on the war. No tax system could pull in that much money without either destroying the economy or causing widespread revolt. One advanced fighter jet costs $80 million. Training the pilot costs millions more. Keeping that jet flying requires constant maintenance, replacement parts, and technology updates. The support system behind troops in the field: ammunition, spare parts, medical care, communication systems cost more than entire historical wars. Taxes make the war's cost completely visible. When costs are visible, people push back. Methods that push costs into the future or hide them from view. Taxation creates a contradiction. The most honest way to pay for war is politically the hardest to sustain. Borrowing is now the primary method. Governments take loans against money they expect to collect later. They sell bonds, essentially IOUs. Investors give money now in exchange for getting paid back later with interest. This approach has several built-in advantages. It lets governments get money immediately. Wars can be fully funded from day one, without waiting for tax money to come in through normal channels. It pushes the payment obligation into the future. The people who vote to start the war do not fully pay for it. Today's voters make the decision. Tomorrow's taxpayers make the payments, often for decades after the fighting stops. The United States still pays interest on money borrowed for World War II. This pattern is not unique to any one country or era. Britain finished paying off World War I debt in 2015, 100 years after the war ended. Some war debts never actually get paid off. They just get refinanced, pushed forward again, and become part of the permanent budget. Borrowing also creates interested parties. The people and institutions lending money, pension funds, insurance companies, other governments need to get paid back. This can create diplomatic influence. A government that has lent money wants the borrowing government to stay stable so it can get repaid. But it also creates weaknesses. Foreign governments holding large amounts of debt can influence policy indirectly. Governments cannot refuse to pay without destroying their ability to borrow in the future. When lenders lose confidence, the cost of borrowing goes up. Interest rates rise, the financial burden gets heavier. But in the short term, costs build up invisibly. Interest charges accumulate. Debts get refinanced and pushed forward. The original war spending becomes mixed into regular government expenses, impossible to separate out. This separates the choice to go to war from the obligation to pay for it. Borrowing is financially the easiest path in the moment, which is exactly why it dominates how modern wars get funded. Inflation gets described as a side effect. In reality, it works as a payment method. When military spending goes up sharply without matching tax increases or economic growth, the amount of money in circulation grows faster than the goods and services available to buy. Prices go up, what your money can buy goes down. This is not accidental. It is the expected result of spending choices made during wartime. Inflation moves resources from regular people to the government without any vote or official tax increase. Several groups pay disproportionately. Workers are hit first. Prices rise faster than wages, and pay adjustments lag behind inflation if they come at all. Savers and people on fixed incomes lose continuously. Money held in cash or fixed payments declines in value, reducing living standards with no mechanism for recovery. Borrowers benefit, governments included. When inflation rises, paying back borrowed money becomes cheaper in real terms. A government that borrowed $100 billion pays it back with money that is worth substantially less. This creates a strange incentive. Governments carrying heavy war debt might actually want moderate inflation because it reduces what they really owe without officially refusing to pay. Inflation is often called the invisible tax. It takes money from people without any announcement, law, or budget document. During World War I, prices in Britain doubled. In Germany, inflation spiraled completely out of control, wiping out people's savings for over a decade. The process was not complicated. Governments printed money to cover war costs that taxes and borrowing could not handle. The costs showed up at stores and in rent bills, not in government announcements. Inflation also works slowly. The extraction happens gradually. People cannot pinpoint exactly when their money became worth less or by how much. Comparing year to year becomes difficult. Is the price increase from war spending, supply problems, or normal market changes? Most people cannot tell the difference. This confusion provides political protection. No single decision can be blamed. Inflation pays for wars while hiding where the payment is coming from. No bills sent, no votes taken, but money flows from households to the government continuously. Modern warfare depends on financial institutions that did not exist in earlier periods. Central banks now directly enable war financing. The process works through several steps. Central banks buy government bonds, which puts money into the financial system and lowers the government's borrowing costs. Lower interest rates mean cheaper debt payments. A government paying 2% interest instead of 5% can borrow much more for much longer. Officially, this is called monetary policy, stabilizing markets, ensuring enough money flows through the system, supporting the economy during disruption. In practice, it allows war financing beyond what private lenders would support. In practical terms, this allows governments to borrow and spend for far longer than private financial markets would normally allow. This blurs the line between government spending decisions and money supply decisions. The central bank, supposedly independent, becomes structurally connected to war financing. During both World Wars, the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank of England bought large amounts of government debt, allowing spending far beyond what private investors would have provided. Private investors evaluate risk. They charge higher interest rates for larger loans. They may refuse to lend beyond a certain point. Central banks do not face those limits. They can expand their holdings almost indefinitely, constrained only by concerns about inflation or currency value. More recently, programs called quantitative easing have done similar things during extended military and security spending. The terminology has changed. The underlying mechanism remains basically the same. The costs are spread out and long-term. Inflation may creep up gradually over years. Long-term interest rates may stay artificially low, distorting investment decisions throughout the economy. Money flows toward government bonds instead of productive business investment. Asset prices stocks, real estate inflate, benefiting people who own those assets while hurting people who earn wages. Wealth gaps often grow during extended periods of money creation. No single institution appears responsible. The Treasury Department borrows money. The central bank buys it. Private banks handle the transactions. Markets absorb the new money and adjust prices. Responsibility is so spread out that no single decision point can stop the process. Each institution operates within its legal authority. Each decision appears technically justified, but together they create sustained funding for operations that might otherwise run into financial limits. The spreading of responsibility is not accidental. It shields war financing from direct political oversight. Each actor can truthfully say they are just doing their job, and they are, but their jobs interconnect to operate largely outside public democratic control. These payment methods continue because they minimize organized opposition. Costs get embedded in debts that come due decades later. They appear as gradual inflation, barely noticeable year to year. They hide in central bank accounting that few citizens ever look at. Responsibility spreads across Treasury departments, monetary authorities, legislative committees, and market processes. No single actor controls everything. No one can be held completely accountable. Pain gets delayed. Taxes go up a little, but not enough to cause immediate hardship. Debt piles up on government books, but the payments fall on future governments. Inflation rises slowly, making it hard to track accurately. No single group sees the complete cost picture. Taxpayers see one piece. Bond investors see returns, not costs. Consumers see rising prices but cannot definitively connect them to war spending. Future generations inherit debt they did not create. This fragmentation prevents unified opposition. When costs are visible and concentrated, resistance forms quickly. When costs are invisible and spread out, opposition struggles to organize or find clear targets. The easier the financing, the longer wars continue. And longer continuation deepens the structural dependence. Debt payments become permanent budget items. Defense contractors develop long-term dependencies, employing thousands across multiple regions. Financial markets expect continued government borrowing. Entire industries organize around sustained military spending. Employment patterns solidify in defense-heavy areas. Local economies specialize, making any spending reduction politically difficult. Beyond certain points, the financing system develops its own momentum, separate from the original war's strategic purpose. Ending the conflict would disrupt these established structures. Political coalitions supporting continuation include actors with purely economic motivations. Defense contractors lobby for continued funding. Regions economically dependent on military spending pressure their representatives. Financial institutions holding government debt push for fiscal stability. Wars become economically embedded beyond their military or political justification. War is not just military action, it is an economic process. Understanding power means understanding how it gets paid for, who bears the costs, when they bear them, how visible those burdens are made, which populations never realize they are paying. These factors determine which conflicts begin, how long they last, and what conditions make them unsustainable. In the next video, we examine why economic pressure and sanctions rarely end wars the way policymakers expect, and what that reveals about the relationship between financial systems and state power. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.